This podcast is brought to you by Hoare Chartered Accountants. Hoare Chartered Accountants are based in Galway City and are a leading provider of audit, accountancy and taxation services. For more information, visit hoarecharteredaccountants.ie. You're welcome along to the Maroon and White pod. So the All-Ireland Senior Football Championship group stage begins this weekend, where Galway welcome the Dubs to Pearse Stadium in the opening round, the All-Ireland series. I'm joined by Barry Cullinane and Cahair of the Irish News to look ahead to the game. To get it out of the way first, Barry, how important do you see this weekend? Obviously, it's still very early and we're going to come to three getting out of this group, but in the grand scheme of things and on Galway's season, how important do you see this weekend?
Yeah, it's not catastrophe if it doesn't go according to plan, but I think it's more optics of it really. And Galway needs, for this Galway team where we know their end goal realistically is, they need probably to start beating the likes of Dublin and maybe Kerry or Ma on a more regular basis. And we had a really good win against Dublin last time out. But it is, I think everything we say about Dublin has to be prefaced with the fact that this is a Dublin team that are now without, we say, Mick Fitzsimons, Jack McCaffrey, James McCarthy, Paul Mannion, Brian Finton, who are all generational players. And we saw last year, and we, I was at Galway Bay and flagged it early on that, I thought Dublin made a mistake. They started their three big hitters, Jack McCaffrey, James McCarthy, and Paul Mannion, and took the three of them off in the last 15 minutes. And I think that's where Galway really thundered into the game. So I think for Galway, it's important that they kind of lay down a marker to say, that they've moved ahead of Dublin in the rankings. And I think that's the importance of it. I think overall, with three teams coming out, it gives you a safety net. And we know that with this group, teams will take points off each other. There's going to be nothing straightforward. But I think for the group themselves, it's just important that momentum keeps going, and they will see this as a good opportunity to kind of put themselves ahead of Dublin in the power rankings.
How do you view this weekend, Cahair?
Yeah, I'd probably view it slightly differently if it was being played in Croke Park as opposed to Salt Hill, because at the business end of it, that's where it's going to be played. That's things look different, play slightly different in Croke Park. Like, all been in Salt Hill plenty of days. Gives good weather for the next wee while, but there'll probably still be a stiffish enough breeze there regardless. And when you're looking at, where Galway are strong and where Dublin are weak at the minute, like, the biggest thing that I took out of Dublin Meath was, you mentioned the players they've lost there, like, just that inability to break Meath's momentum in the first half. They just could not buy a ball in the middle of the field. And when, the chips have been down for Dublin teams in the last 12 or 13 years, you always had McCarthy or Fenton or Kilkenny to come and take a kick out, to come and win a ball, break the momentum. And they just could not break Meath's. And so you look at a game on Sunday where there's a breeze, Galway get it first. Can Dublin break that momentum? Galway are just going to squeeze the life out of them. You're looking at, Cluxton doesn't have the range now to go over the top against the breeze, so you could squeeze him in, and we saw that again from me. So we'll see bits and pieces of what both teams are about, but I think it's a very, very different game in its style to what it would be if it was being played in Croke Park. I think you'd get a much better sense of exactly where the two teams are. Like, I expect Galway to win this weekend. I think they are in a better place than Dublin. I think they're stronger in a lot of areas of the field. But I think what we'll get when we're analysing the game on Sunday night and Monday morning is probably a wee bit of false narratives out of it. We'll not really know how they're going to stack up in Croke Park, because the conditions and the venue and the tightness of it and the difference to where it's going to be in a few weeks' time is just, it's pretty significant, I think, and so it's hard to judge teams just fully on that game.
Even if you're looking at it, Barry, Dublin, the one thing this year with this team, they haven't really travelled well, even throughout the league. You look up in the athletic grounds. Obviously, they got off to a bright start in Leinster against Wicklow, but even Portlaoise, they weren't great either. This team hasn't really travelled well. Like they showed stages at home in Croke Park during the league, but away from home, it hasn't all been plain sailing for Dublin.
No, and like this sounds like I'm repeating myself, but this isn't the same Dublin. That they don't have the range of panel and the depth of panel that they've had previously, and they don't have those experienced leaders. And I have to say, the one I think they're missing most is James McCarthy. Like he is, like even last year we saw he went and picked up Matthew Tierney and like totally took Matthew Tierney's influence out of the game. And I think once he was taken off, we kind of got a stranglehold around the middle of the pitch. And he's just such a physical player, brings such physicality, such energy to it. Unfortunately, they don't have it. And, they have one marquee guy in Con O'Callaghan, but they're expecting him to do a huge amount of the donkey work as well. And Kieran Kilkenny will still cause us problems, but he won't cut us open like he has previously to teams. So I think it's not a coincidence that this Dublin team doesn't travel well, because this isn't the Dublin team of the past, and that's a very simple argument for me to make. But it's kind of as plain as the nose in your face that they just have lost those marquee guys, and they're going to be very hard to backfill.
Are Galway forewarned from the Croke Park game in the league, do you think? Or do you think?
Yeah, I take those last couple of league games with a pinch of salt, because we don't really know where Galway were. My hunch, and any kind of, I suppose, small little information that I've heard leak from panel, which is not much. They're a tight bunch. Not much gets out. I think at that stage, Galway were in peak championship training mode, and I think they trained really really hard through that latter stages of the league, and I think it probably caught them. And look, Crow Park, you can have off days. They weren't great against Kerry, but you have to say Galway have rebounded really really well. But they are warned, and I think Dublin played Monaghan at the weekend, and I think they were impressive against Monaghan as well. So they still have good players. They're still going to be really really strong. But I think where this Galway team is at the minute, um, they don't go into any of these games expecting to win. But I think they'll be very disappointed if they lose.
Are you expecting a reaction from the Dubs this weekend? Yeah.
It's what reaction is in them. Like I would expect them to do better. As I said, one of the things they'll really have zoned in on is breaking that momentum. Like they cannot afford. Meath are not going to win an All Ireland. They're not an All Ireland winning team. And yet they were still dominant enough and boisterous enough to just go and get the run on Dublin. And Dublin hadn't the leadership was lacking in terms of stopping it, which again goes back. I agree with Barry. Like for me, like of all the greats that Dublin have produced in the last 20 years, I put James McCarthy at the very, very head of the list. I think and in those moments, like I could just you could be sure James McCarthy would have went and won a ball. He would have died on something just to break it. And it's whether Dublin actually have that at the minute. Who comes and break it, you know. So like, and then I suppose when they see that themselves, right? That was a massive problem against me. So they'll probably have spent now 2 3 weeks zoning right in on that and how to break that stranglehold of a team, and they'll probably do better at it now as a result. But in terms of a reaction, um, do they actually just have the quality on the pitch to go and beat Galway at the minute? They still have quality forwards. They still have forwards that on their day can beat you for sure, any of them. Um, but I would feel that it's going to come down a lot to possession stakes. And if Galway dominate possession, Galway are supremely good at holding possession, supremely good at working the score, been really, really patient. And then, we've seen the when the opportunity arises, or even if it doesn't properly arise, they're keen for 2 pointers and all of that combined. I just there's too many elements of the game where I just struggle to see Dublin matching Galway over 70 minutes on it. Now, not by a colossal margin. We're not talking Galway winning this thing by 10 or 12 or 14 points. But if you put a gun to my head and said, well, Dublin won it at the end, I don't see a way that Dublin won it. They might lose it by a point, they might lose it by three, five, but I just think they'll lose it in the end.
Is Bugler the big one though? If they get him back on the pitch, obviously he was a colossal for them out throughout the league when he was fit.
He's huge, and like at breaking lines and the form that he'd been in the league and the score and kicking again, kicking 2 pointers and even the goals. He got the 2 goals against Galway in the league game in Croke Park, like, and he was just absolutely on fire early in the league. And it's interesting because there's been a wee bit of coverage around it after the Ulster final. And it's something I had noticed a trend, and Galway haven't particularly gone down the line of maybe Armagh and Donegal, where like you saw again, Johnny McGrath just detailed to Ryan O'Donoghue in the Connacht final, whereas Donegal and Armagh are playing, very, very, very much zonal. Whoever comes into your zone, it does not matter. You don't really have a man marking job at all. Nobody in that Ulster final was particularly man marked or tagged, and that was a lot of what led to Oisin Connolly scoring 6 points, was he just found the gap between the zones, and nobody was really picking him up, and he was very, very smart in doing so. So, for Galway are still more man to, they will designate matchups, and those players will follow around the field, which allows you to be pulled apart a wee bit too. There's danger lurking within that, and if they get their matchup on Bugler wrong, like, are you looking at Silk? Are you looking at Dylan McHugh? Are you looking at Sean Kelly? Even, who do you go with there? But whatever you do, you better get it right, because he is the man that if you let him off, he'll hurt you for sure.
Barry, do you see any changes to the Galway team this weekend from the Connacht final?
Do I see any changes? I suppose a lot of it depends on Shane and Damien. I think from what I hear, both seem to be making positive strides and will be in the frame to tog. Whether they'll start, I don't think so. Peter Cook, will they say, look, let's get him back into the throw, but maybe not. So I think overall they'll probably, again, injury, we don't know. Like Rob Finnerty's knee looked like it was giving him bother in the Connacht final. John Maher's ankle. So like if those two guys drop out, then obviously there's going to be enforced changes. If everybody's fit, I think he'll stick with what he knows, as he'll stick with what has proved successful. And I think, like obviously Sean Bugler is a brilliant footballer, brilliant wing forward, huge work rate. But when Cahair was naming out, people to pick him up, and that's what it comes down to at this level is who runs out of, I suppose, when you're looking at your matchups, it's who runs out of people first. And that's where I think Galway have a huge advantage in that, they can get Dylan McHugh, Liam Silk, Sean Kelly, Johnny McGrath, Jack Lynn, Sean Fitzgerald are all comfortable in the art of defending and can all go and pick someone up and get a detail, they'll get a detail of a job to do. So I think Galway are in a really, really strong position for that. So I think that's a big advantage for Galway. So I think Sean Mulkern's, what did we do with him this time around? So there's a few little things to throw into the mix. So I think if John Maher's fit, if Rob Finnerty's fit, I think we start with the same 15. But I would see, like, if we get an opportunity early doors to bring in Shane, to bring in Damien, to bring in Peter Cook, I think he'll take that.
Barry, when I was only chatting to Morris last week on the podcast, we were just referencing the point. Is it maybe where Galway might decide to change up the defence, still given with the forwards having that Dublin forward line of Costello, Conor O'Callaghan, Colin Baskell, Sean Bugler, Kieran Kilkenny. Like we've seen Liam Silk went into to the full back line last year when he played most of that in the half in that Dublin game. Do you see someone maybe like Keane Hernan coming into the defence this weekend for a matchup?
Well, he did very well when he came on. Maybe Sean Fitzgerald was under the pump a little bit against Aidan O'Shea, but Aidan O'Shea is a brilliant footballer. But you don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Like Sean Fitzgerald has built up enough. Like Sean Fitzgerald didn't play that Dublin game, and I think that's where we saw the value that he has in the full back line for us. So I think he has enough credit in the bank to say, yeah, look, we're not going to drop him just because Keane Hernan had a good 10 minutes and maybe he hadn't his best day at the office. But they're great options to have. Like you name those players, yeah, absolutely, all really really good players. Conor Callahan, obviously the standout one. They don't they don't strike fear into you. You know, they're not David Clifford, Paddy Clifford, Paul Ganey form type of players. Joe O'Connor. You know, I think we're fine. I don't think we need to panic on that. So I think always stick. I think always stick with what they have, what they know, and you know, look at the benefit of having all those options on the bench.
What do you think, Cara, when you look at the Galway team? Do you think they'll stick with the Connacht final team?
Just as you were talking there, I sort of sketched a few sort of potential matchups, and I do just wonder about the who exactly. We talked about Bunker there and getting that right, but Colin Callahan has the potential to destroy you on his day too, still, and he maybe hasn't done it as often in the last couple of years as he would have done previously, but you get that one wrong as well, and like for that you're looking physicality and pace, and I mean, is that Silk in the Galway defence? Because he's probably like, there's no obvious. I'm looking at that Galway defence and thinking there's nothing that jumps out at me. I know Barry's talking about you don't run out of man markers, and you're right. Like you're comfortable in most of your battles. You probably win most of your battles, but if you lose that key back or those two key battles, if you get those two wrong, you still end up taking a lot of water as a result. And Fitzgerald's probably not. I don't know. Fitzgerald's probably not suited to that. And McGrath seems suited to Costello, and Glynn seems suited to Pascal, and those kind of sort themselves out a wee bit. I just O'Callaghan would worry a wee bit. But
Hmm.
where I see Galway, like to be totally honest, I've probably had my doubts about Galway for quite a wee while. Like I know a lot of people at the start of the year would have tipped them to win the All Ireland. I didn't foresee it, but part of that was I probably saw the game going in a slightly different direction than it maybe has under the rules. And I feel that as the game has settled down, I veered more back towards them having a good chance at it because I feel like those longer spells of possession are part of the game again. The teams are dropping right in inside the arc and they're given that opportunity. They're not pressing out as high as I maybe envisaged they would press. So, and I think that suits Galway. We've seen them over the last couple of years become really, really good at that. Absolutely brilliant at it. And work on the score. I just would have concerns around their attacking, not their shape as such, but there's just their sort of their reliance on 2 points, um, and the way that they seem to structure their shape to play for 2 pointers. Now, it was effective in the first half against Mayo. The 2 pointers were massive early on. They were big scores, but the longer the game went on, and then particularly when you're playing against that breeze, you're just not kicking 2 pointers into that. And I feel like the when they're trying to play the other way, that when their attacking game is trying to then break lines or looking for kick passes or whatever it is they're trying to alter it with or shake it up a wee bit with. I just don't feel that that's that fluid with them at the minute, and I thought that was reflected. To be brutally honest, I thought they were lucky to get out of the Connacht final. At 43 minutes when Mayo had come back to within 2 points. You were looking at it and thinking like it is Mayo's to lose here, and for me, that's what happened. I felt that Mayo lost it with the chances that they missed over the next 12 or 13 or 14 minutes, that they had opportunities that if they'd ever got in front of Galway, they could have completely changed the tempo of the game and completely changed the way it was being played, and they just never got in front, and that never allowed them to do that. But I felt that, a lot of it was Mayo losing it. Just in Grove Park, and there's that thing of Walsh's fitness and Comer's fitness. Like if those two boys are fit, I mean, they haven't used Comer much, didn't use him much last year, but I feel that with the rules, and we saw it in the league game even against Dublin, when he came in, it's just something different. He gives them, you can just turf the ball and at him, and you know you're not going to do it all the time, but in the three or four opportunities that you might get, he could, he could wreak some havoc. And then you don't have to be brilliant. If you kick two balls in and Comer scores two goals off them, the rest of your performance doesn't have to be all that deadly. He's done enough, and so they're there in the group. But I probably wouldn't just have them on the pedestal maybe that other people would have them on at this stage.
Barry, do you agree?
Jesus, Cahair will have to go. No, I can see exactly where he's coming from, and I said it. I don't know who I was talking to after the game. Like Galway scored 117 against Mayo, but they had to work really, really hard for that 117. To go down the route of winning in All Ireland, they're going to need Shane or Damien or both, playing relatively well that could kick 2, 3, 4 points from play for you at their ease. And I think unless we get that, I'm not sure we'll get to the Holy Grail. And in terms of the kind of finals, Car's 100% right. Mayo will feel like they left an opportunity behind them, but I think we can look sometimes at the ones they miss, like, even the goal in the Hessian shot. Like, if you zoom out wide, you can see the effort Sean Kelly made to actually just get a little bit of pressure on that shot that maybe forced it not to be as good. So Galway have to take a lot of credit for that. In terms of the 2-pointers, yeah, so just touching on all Cara's point, the 2-pointers, yeah, and like we've like I've been on here, Paul, numerous occasions, and we've always said, like, if a team put the man marker on Paul Conroy and they negate the influence he has in the game, then it puts Galway on the back foot. And we said the same thing against Mayo. Teams have tried it, but they just haven't been able. And eventually, a team will come up with a plan, and they'll take the control that he has away from us. You're looking at the Dublin team. Could they say, look, let's put Brian Howard on Paul Conroy, let him track him all day and try and take that influence away? My thing, and I agree with Karen, all his points about Galway, but my thing, I'm not convinced that this is a good Dublin team. Conor Callahan could destroy you on his day. I think did he kick? He got 6 points. I think he got 3 points from play against Meath. Paddy Small got 5 points from play. So I don't think, like, if you're looking at their backs, Theo Clancy, Davy Byrne around a long time, Connor Terrell. I don't think they have.
It's unlikely to start, I'd say, as well. He was pulled early against.
Yeah, no, they have a good bit of physicality around the middle of the park with O'Coffey and stuff. But, like, I would imagine he'll be tasked with kind of jumping into Keane Darcy's space. But Galway have physicality all over the pitch. So I'm not saying Galway the finished article, but any stretch of the imagination up top, again, I agree with Cahair. Maybe we just need to be a little bit more fluid, and we need to be, a little bit more clinical. But as I said, I just think we are a little step ahead of Dublin at the minute, and I think these are the 2 points that we need to rack up because we've 2 more difficult games coming down the track.
It's a good point you make, Ard. Galway showed the grit in that second half when the backs were against the wall and it looked like it was going against them to get the result. But from an attacking perspective, Portroyd should definitely be looking for an improvement this weekend.
No question. Like, and it is tough. It is tough against the breeze like that in the game the way it is. You had previously the staples of possession where you could have chipped a kick out away to a corner back and built a wee bit of momentum back into the game, and it's real, and we're seeing that reflected in not just the team with it building up the big score, but also the team against it just struggling get enough attacks, struggling to get their hands on enough balls. So there was that element of it too, like that they were always going to have a tougher second half against it than they did with it, and it goes back, I said earlier about James McCarthy, and why I would put him at the head of the list for Dublin, but for me, like if I was, there's a lot of household names in that Galway team, but if you offered me a Galway player, it's Killian McDade every day of the week and four times on a Sunday. Like, that run that he made, that 80-yard run that he made to win that free against the head against Mayo was just colossal. That is what Dublin were lacking against me. That leadership was just colossal. I just thought that is one of the best plays we will see this summer. Like I was just, and then like we saw him in Croke Park in the game last year and what he brought in terms of his scoring, but that nearly impressed me more. Like going demanding the ball, taking it, carrying through tackle after tackle, drawing his free, getting them out, and I just think that when you have that, you have a lot as well, and you're not going to be far away.
Yeah, on that, Barry, obviously, Killian McDade really back to his best. Paul Conroy and John Maher in the middle really good. Keane Darcy really good. Sean Kelly at the minute, like he's been really good this year and really back to his best. But on his position at the minute, do you think the position of Sean Kelly is right?
Are you trying to make a headline here, Paul?
No, it's just an honest question because I think he should be further back.
Yeah, I suppose. Like I thought he was excellent in the league in that just out and out number 7 position. I thought he was absolutely brilliant, and he causes consternation. But you kind of have to fit. Then we brought in Sean McCurran for Roscommon, and he tracked into Smith. So like you have to cut your cloths to suit your measure and get your best players on the pitch. And I suppose it's all a matter of how you do that. Like there was a stage at one stage, Keane Darcy was kind of wing back in that Roscommon game. So
Yeah.
positions aren't as important, I think. For me, I agree. I would love to see him sitting in that half back line, and every opportunity he gets to transition up the pitch really, really quickly and cause opposition all sorts of problems. I would love to see that. For me, he's operating a little bit kind of as a midfielder a little bit too much, and it's kind of not giving him the opportunity to cause separation between himself and the opposition. But yeah, that's certainly a very valid point. But like you know, we have to realize that these lads are looking at them every evening. They've studied, David Morris and all the management team. They'll have studied Dublin to the nth degree. They'll have studied Mayo to the nth degree, and they'll put them in positions where they feel they can maybe have an influence. Either way, they can have an influence in a positive way for Galway, or they can kind of maybe negate the influence that certain Mayo players would have had and now certain Dublin players would have had. But yeah, I agree with you. I think his most natural position is that 7 spot. We probably don't have an out and out 6, the John Daly type who's very, very comfortable in that position. But Liam Silk certainly doesn't weaken it. But yeah, look, I agree with you on the Sean Kelly one. And back to Killian McDade, like he's developing into such a leader for us. I think it's funny how Sean Kelly is probably one of the most respected footballers in the county. I know he's held in such high esteem by Galway management and Galway players, but maybe he just doesn't really, he doesn't put himself front and centre. And I think Killian McDade, as vice captain, has taken a bit of the responsibility of media work, and looks a little bit more comfortable in it. And I think that's been a great move by Galway as well. And I think it's given Killian that responsibility, but what a player he's turning into be and or turning out to be. And he's coming up at those key moments, particularly Cahair mentioned the run, but his block, or the one he dived on when David McBrien got injured. We were under the pressure in that first half. And I think that set a tone and it got his motor. And I think those are the big moments in games that you need to win. And in Killian McDade, we're someone that can win them.
Can I throw a theory at you just on Sean Kelly and because you boys will know a lot better, but it's just having a quick check there to double check my theory. Like, but Sean Kelly has played an awful lot of football in the last 3 or 4 or 5 years at either left half back or left wing forward. So he's played down that left wing. Am I right in saying the whole of the Galway back nine are right footed? Um, there, I don't think there's a left footed player. You take John Daly out of the team. The back nine are all right footed
Yeah.
players, and I actually feel that Sean Kelly gets sort of and this could be completely wrong, but I feel like he's the most able to go and play on the left wing. He can use his left if he's stuck more so than maybe others can. And I actually feel that that was a lot of the way he ends up playing on the left wing. And I don't actually know that it suits him all that well sometimes. I think if he had the opportunity to play at right half back or right half forward, I think you'd see a different player because he can run in straight lines up the line. He's very, very good ball carrier. And I just feel like that there's a natural balance thing there all the time with teams, and like you have Tierney and Finnerty up front who give you good. I actually thought that the key moment in the All Ireland final last year was Finnerty going off because you lost your balance when he went off. And just looking at that defense, if your back nine is all right footed, then Sean Kelly gets the raw deal there a wee bit.
Yeah, you're right. You're right, Car, but in my own head, Paul, you can jump in on this. In my own head, uh, when I see Sean Kelly playing for my Cullen, it's actually down that left hand flank.
Mm.
When you can just visualize something, and someone could turn around and say, "You're blowing me out of the water," and stats and but I see he seems to be more natural on that kind of left side coming in the pitch, where Dylan McHugh seems to be more natural on the right hand side, keeping it wide, hugging that. So maybe that's something they're looking for, is that they have a wing back who cuts into the centre and attacks down the centre, and they have another wing back who can attack out wide. So I agree with you. You would imagine that Sean would look like he's more comfortable at 5, but that even for Mike Cullen, he always seems to come down that left flank, seems to be more comfortable on it, cutting in, taking a ball. I can visualize it. Peter Cook gets the ball in midfield. Sean Kelly's off his shoulder after cutting in from that left hand channel and cutting down the centre. So he does seem more comfortable that way.
I'd love to see him back at 3.
There's arguments to be made, Paul. I would say, and I think if we look back over these, when he was 3, there was probably calls that he was curtailed at full back, and maybe we should have him out the pitch a little bit more. But look, we're talking about changes and we're talking about different movement. We have no reason to do that as of yet. We're Connacht champions. We're playing reasonably well. We were kind of, if you took the first 6 league games, we were the best team in the league. We were in the All-Ireland final last year. And what's funny for me is we were in the All-Ireland final last year, and I put my hands up. I'm as guilty as anyone at this. We came down from that All-Ireland final, absolutely devastated. How did we get bet by Armagh? That's when we're going to leave. That's one that's going to hurt for years. We left that one behind us. All sorts of names. Yet after last Sunday, there's a narrative, geez, Armagh could put back-to-back All-Irelands here. I don't think we got the credit. I think Armagh got the credit that they deserved, and I think we got more stick than what we deserve after that All-Ireland final loss. But we were in the All-Ireland final last year. We've come back and won a Connacht championship. We're now gone into the All-Ireland series with loads of football to play. At the minute, we shouldn't be looking at changing anything. We're doing well. Keep going at it.
Yeah. It's even interesting if we're looking at that kind of inside line. Matthew Peary's still kind of drifting in and out. Matthew Thompson's been a great addition this year, Car. And obviously Rob Finnerty has been excellent considering we've been out without the 2 boys in Shane and Damien.
Yeah, look, and I suppose it's where you get the best out of Tierney sometimes. When the 2 boys aren't there, that just that wee bit of physicality really causes problems inside. That they like having it there, and then they seem if Comer's not there particularly, they're absent of that a wee bit, and him filtering in there, like we saw the damage that he caused, and like you say about Armagh not getting enough credit, but like, and you're right, you're totally right because they didn't get enough credit. One of the two of the things that they did, and come back to the Sean Kelly thing, two of the things they did for the All Ireland final last year. One was putting Conor Mackin into the team to specifically deal with Matthew Tierney drifting into the full forward line. He had the extra bit of height, and it meant dropping Peter McGrain, who played all year. It was a massive call. But that was because Tierney had drifted in pretty much once against the goal, and the goal came off it just out of the sheer, like he didn't even touch the ball, but the goal came off it, and it was too big of a threat to leave hanging. So, and the other thing was that I remember watching back the video before the All Ireland final of the group game, and Armagh had come with a fairly heavy press on Galway that afternoon at times. Really went after the press right up, and the press was broken umpteen times by Dylan McHugh, who was on Oisin Connolly that day. And Connolly struggled defensively with him. And for the All Ireland final, they switched wings. They switched Connolly to the other wing. And Connolly was man of the match. So, like, Armagh's management definitely didn't get enough credit for the things that they got right in that All Ireland final. And as I said earlier, I felt that over the course of the season, Rob Finnerty was your best forward, and him going off at that stage in the All Ireland final. You even go back to I know Shane was kicking with a bad quad and wasn't right, but the two left-footed frees that he missed in the first half, like they're points for Rob Finnerty, absolute nailed on scores, and sure you instead of losing that game by a point, you want to be a point, and that is the margin. But it's like anything, like history's written by the winners, and I wouldn't think that in the real nitty gritty analysis of it, I wouldn't think that Galway would have been too despondent at their performance in the All Ireland final. They got big displays out of a lot of players. Like I'm so impressed with Cian Darcy that day. Like and he's earned his corn ever since. Like he's been a much more of a mainstay this year. So they're in a decent place. They're in the group of teams that can win the All Ireland. There's anything up between six, seven, eight there. And they're definitely in it. But I wouldn't. Other people would have maybe had them at the very top of that group earlier in the league when they were going well. I would never have had them at the very top of it. Now I have to say I would have had them in the group, but not at the very head of it.
Who are your favourites to win the All Ireland?
Uh, I think a flip flop 51-49 between Donegal and Kerry. And not because of necessary. And like every time I come around to it, I think my 51 is still Donegal because um, I believe that even watching them on Sunday, they were prepared to nearly sacrifice an Ulster title um, and all the damage that Oisin Connolly did. I believe that their zonal defensive setup is entirely about Kerry and Croke Park and entirely about also then it feeds into if it's Galway in the line as well, the kick passing game, the zonal defence and the way that they sit in, you get into that shape very quickly. They don't go man to man. It's built for cutting off a kicking game. That's what it's about for me, and that's what makes it because I think that Kerry are going to be very reliant on the kicking game, and the kicking game has looked class from them at times this year, but it's looked class from them at other times in other years, and when it's gotten to Croke Park, it has fallen down, and when you boil down the stats of their games, how much ball do they turn over looking for the kicking game all the time? Their running game's not as prolific. I did a I did a piece last year where like, I can't remember the exact stats, but basically, if Kerry didn't score off a counter attack in two phases, if they didn't score off an attack in two phases, they basically didn't score. They need to play back to front football, and they can't play the slow stuff that Galway play. They're not good at it, and so I think Donegal will make them play that, and they're not good at it, and that's why if my head's on the block, I do think that the two. I think Armagh are the third best team, not the third best team. Sorry, they're in that three, but we've just history tells us that unless you're Dublin or Kerry, retaining All Irelands is unbelievable. Nobody has done it. Nobody does it. That's just it, and um, that mostly the reason why I would think that Armagh won't do it. Just that ability to get up and win that big game again. Somebody else needs one as well.
Barry, last time I asked you your question for the All Ireland favourites was before our last two league games against Dublin and Kerry. You weren't having Kerry ahead of Galway then. Are you still not having them ahead of Galway?
I don't know. Depends on. I think if look, if I was Cahair or any other person from the outside and I heard Galway talking about Shane Comer and Damien Walsh, I'd be like, "Oh lads, come on, we can get over it." But I think as a Galway person, we have to hinge our hopes on the fact that we can get one of the lads back because they can have such an influence on the game. I'm not sure where Galway are. I'll be 100%
Do
honest
you
with you.
think we need to see Comer and Walsh soon though?
Yeah, I think we do. I do think we do. Yeah. But as I said, I'm not 100% sure where Galway are. What I know is I absolutely, Jesus, I I love what they do. I love the honesty about everything that they're trying. I love that work rate. I love how, John Maher's tackle count, the blocks, Liam Silk's brilliance. There's so much to really like about them. Do they have that finishing edge now to go and do the job? Time will tell. So I'm not going to say where Galway are. They're ahead of Kerry. Maybe not. In Donegal, I was only chatting to someone today. Like, the reality is Galway have 2 games played. Uh, Take New York out of it. They've at a minimum they've 6 more to play if we're to go on and win the All Ireland. Donegal have gone through the ringer a fair bit now. And Jim McGuinness referenced the Munster Hurling Championship, right? If you're Munster Hurling champions, you've to go on and win the All Ireland, you've 2 more games. So when you can come through the ringer of the Munster Hurling Championship, and you said, as we've 2 more games to go and win this, they at a minimum have 6 more games to play. And I think that's an awful lot of football to keep the energy levels that Donegal have. And I thought that kind of came back to bite them a little bit against Galway last year. Yeah, they had some good performances, but I don't think they got to the level that they were in Ulster. They'll have learned, obviously, but I'm just not sure they can keep that going. I think Armagh, maybe, again, they have the same amount of games. I don't think they've been as tested as Donegal, or they haven't invested as much in maybe into the Ulster Championship as Donegal. And we know Rian O'Neill was there the last day. If he comes back into things, he's a big boost for them. The winner will probably come, this isn't profound, the winner will come from Donegal, Armagh, Kerry or Galway. I think. I can't see anyone else winning it. At the minute, like Cahair, you'd have to say if the All Ireland final was played in the next 2 weeks, Donegal are probably out in front, but who knows? And one advantage I think Galway have and Armagh is that if they come out of this group, realistically, they don't face any, like Donegal will be expected to top their group, Kerry will be expected to top their group. I think Galway or Armagh will have a relatively comfortable, no, that's taken out of context, but I think they won't face any massively stiff tests to get them on to All Ireland semi final time.
The only concern about Comer and Walsh, Barry, if you can't get them on the pitch, it is nearly similar to last year where the two of them are really playing catch up because they do need games is what they need now to get them back into the legs. Like even if you look last year, both of them tried desperately so hard to get back on the pitch towards the latter stages in last year and probably just didn't have the games with the injuries they picked up last year.
I think we've learned, to be honest, and I think Pádraig nailed it when he said if they're fit, they'll be part of it. If they're not, we just keep going what we have because they're doing okay. I and I think that's a good mentality to have because players can read, you know, I'm not saying, but if you're involved in a team and there's an injured fella who's really, really important to you, and you're down looking at his rehab, and you're invested, and you're not giving the time to the guys that are on the pitch, players see that. So I'd say Pádraig has said, look, you prove yourselves that you're fit, I'll play you, and up to that, don't 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 come near me, for want of a better word. I'm going to focus on what I have, and I think that's a good way to be. As I said, if they're there, it's a bonus. But I think we have learned that we can't overly rely on them, and that I don't mean that in a bad way towards them, because they work ferociously hard to get to where they are. And like for Damien himself personally, like Jesus, how can you'd wonder how he's able to even stay going. And if we can get him back and fit, he's a colossus. But I just don't think the focus is as acute on having the two lads there as it has been in previous years.
Yeah, and even someone we haven't mentioned is Limo Keneally, if you consider the point he got coming on, like that's going to do his confidence massive and definitely probably
And
keep.
like even like if the two lads played, like would Matthew Thompson have got the game time that he has
Yeah,
got up, and like he looks so comfortable on the ball. Reminds me to a certain extent reminds me a little bit like Paul Conroy. He's left and right. He goes into really good positions. Would Limo Keneally have come on and kicked that winner against Mayo? There's
and we
for
have
every
been crying out for more scoring forwards.
exactly, and for every cloud there is a silver lining, and like when we don't have the two lads, we develop more lads, and I think Porrick has just he's accepted that. I think the players have accepted that, and everything else is a bonus from there.
Final predictions on this one, Car? You expect Galway to get the job done here at the weekend?
I do, yeah, I do. In whatever form it takes, it's hard to predict in Salt Hill because the breeze is such a factor. I don't
Yeah.
mean it's hard to predict. I just mean it's hard to predict what shape the game will take because it can be so affected by it. Your first half, you could find yourself back and then having to chase it, and it is a different game. You could find yourself 12, 13 up and having to protect it, which I would like to think Galway should be pretty decent at at this stage. But whatever way it falls, I do expect Galway to win it. But as I said at the start, it I just don't know that we'll know much more about either team by the time the close of play comes this weekend than we do right now. And if it was in Croke Park, we maybe would know a wee bit more, but we won't.
You would expect Pearse Stadium to be rocking in one way this weekend when you consider Galway after winning the Connacht title, Dublin coming to town. Even the Dublin supporters, you would expect them to travel this weekend. So hopefully there is a good attendance in that perspective. But you expect Galway to get the job done too, Barry?
Yeah, I do. I think it's a good opportunity. I think. Am I right in saying that this will be our last home game of the year?
Yeah.
Um, unless we get
No,
a home
finished
prelim.
second. Have you finished
Is
second?
is the preliminary quarterfinals home and away there?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so if we
Okay,
finish
yeah.
second,
So
yeah,
finish second to get a home. Okay, that's fair
yeah.
enough. But I think the fact the hurling game is on beforehand, the weather's promised good. Sometimes people stay away if the weather's good. What I've seen previously is that people are a little bit afraid of the traffic in South Hill because obviously lots of people making their way towards the beach, and maybe that does affect crowd. I think it's on GA plus, so
Yeah.
in fact, it's not on, on terrestrial TV. Maybe will help the crowd a little bit as well. But yeah, there should be a big crowd. And as I said, this team has bought in behind that. This supporters have bought in behind this team, and they've guys that they've latched onto. They've latched onto Johnny McGrath. They've latched onto John Maher. Latched onto Keane Darcy, and obviously Paul Conroy, Sean Kelly, Liam Silk. They've so many players. The fact Porrick is you know held in such reverence in Galway as well. Like there's just a good, decent support behind this team. I think everyone will buy in behind them against Dublin, and I think I think we'll win. I won't say comfortably, but I think it could be a performance. Galway will say, yeah, look, happy with that. Out the door, move on to the next one, and it leaves Dublin with a lot of work to do.
Just if we're even looking at this group, because there's no point saying otherwise, it's the group of death. Armagh, Derry, Galway, Dublin. There might be Galway fans saying Derry didn't have a great league or whatever, but Galway still only went up in that league and drew with Derry. And I think 5 or 6 weeks is a good while to fix things. You look at Armagh, like a defeat for either of these teams, it does nearly put them on the back foot when you consider what's to come, Gar.
It does. I think in the way that the season has gone and the league has gone, um, I think you're kind of. I know you're talking about a 2-2 split, almost Galway and Armagh at the top and Dublin there at the bottom. It's probably most people would look at it as 3-1 split. For Galway, Armagh, and then Dublin, and then Derry. And Derry are the team that the other three are going to target to get 2 points off, because of the way that their league went, the injuries they've had, the players they've lost. It's just been a tough. It's been a tough campaign for them. Um, so far now they've had a wee bit of time to get bodies patched up and bodies back. Played a few challenge games, decent enough reports coming back out of it. Brought in a few of the under 20s. They were beaten in the Ulster semi final by Tyrone, and three or four of them came straight into the panel to beef it up a wee bit as well. So like Derry are not to be discounted, and it's a dangerous thing. It's a dangerous thing for anybody that does that, because you could. They're not, you know, they're not one of the weaker sides. They're not, you look at Group Three and what you've got there, and I'm not saying they're all weaker sides, but if it was any one of maybe Clare or down in the group, you would say definitely look, Galway, Armagh, and Dublin will be the top three there. But you just
Is
couldn't
it
say it.
is it flawed in that perspective, do you think, when you look at Group 3 to
Well,
be
sure, the whole thing's flawed. Really, like sure, we've known that for years, and um, I've actually meant to, I've actually meant to do a study, like, but it's just incredible how often Kerry get the soft draw.
yeah.
It's really bad, and I wonder, because of seedings and pots and stuff, is it actually like, is the thing unintentionally rigged in their behavior, or are they just lucky that they keep getting the soft draws? But then, in other times they've been unlucky with soft draws. Like, I don't think it's always helped them that necessarily, and they've ended up coming to the big game in Croke Park and they're flat and they're not at the pitch of it, and it has cost them as well. So they might see a soft draw again as all that good a thing. But look, it's a flawed system, but at the same time, like that is the luck of the draw. At the end of the day, like the Champions League before this season would have, you could have had the same. Like, you had your pot seeded, and whatever fell in the pot, you could have, like, look at, geez, I'm a Man United fan, like, and we
So
got
am I,
old,
unfortunately.
older than you, like, but in '99, sure, it was Bayern, Barcelona, and United in the group. So, like, it can happen. It can happen very handy. It's just the luck of the draw. You don't want to take that away from it too. I think I'm not a big fan of seeding stuff. Let them at it, and whatever big draws you get, make them proper championship games and bid on.
The only thing about this structure, I think the final day drama has been brilliant over the last few years, if you look at the last day of it.
Kieran McKinney said that it's the best structure we ever had, and I'd be inclined to agree with him in the sense of, like, I would have at the start thought three teams qualifying is weak. It takes a lot out of the good of the early games, but what has actually transpired is that, you know the danger of not coming top in your group, and it's not even your next game. It's the fact that then you have to play 3 weeks running if you don't finish top of your group, and that has caught a lot of teams out. So there has been a serious race for top spot. And
Yeah.
that's just real. And then obviously nobody wants to get eliminated. And then, you'd want to finish second instead of third because you want your home game instead of having to go away to Balbafay or away to Salthill or away. So, like, there's a lot of inbuilt hidden jeopardy that has actually done a real lot of good and produced a lot of really good games that has probably been missed.
How are you viewing it, Barry, when you look across? Obviously, Group 1 and 4, and they're fairly tough groups. You look at 2 and 3, and obviously there is advantages to Kerry when they're in there, and even Monaghan are probably licking their lips too when they're in Group 3 at the minute, and even Loud from the weekend as well.
Yeah, there's no doubt. There's two standout hard groups and two groups that you would say don't have the same strength and depth. Um, but as Cahair said, that's the luck of the draw. And if you want to be All Ireland champions, you have to go and beat these teams. And if you put up that great Dublin team of the 4 years ago, 5 years ago, you put them into any of those groups, they go and win it, and they top their group and they kick on, and that's the standard you have to apply to teams, and that's the standard Galway are going to try and set for themselves. And as Cahair said, it's the 3 weeks in a row. If you don't top the group playing 3 weeks in a row, and the fact is you lose on average probably around 1.5 players per game through injury. So that's going to be a massive test of everyone's panels, and I think that's probably where Galway have a fair strength in that we've developed that depth to our panel. So I think the competitive nature of Pádraig Joyce, he'd actually prefer that we have this tough group. He'll be licking his lips, saying let's go at it and see how we get on. And if it transpires that we're good enough to top it, great. If not, we go for a preliminary quarter final and see how we get on from there.
Great stuff, lads. Well, it's just to remind listeners, it's Galway Dublin 5 p.m. Saturday evening, live on GA Plus in Pearse Stadium. But that's all we do have time for on this evening's show. Thanks to Cahair and Barry for coming on.